to commemorate National Nutrition Week. That is from the 1st of September through to the 7th. And for that reason, today we have a nutritionist in studio, and our focus will be on the importance of good nutrition in the early stages of a child, specifically between the ages of 0 to 5 years. This year's theme for the National Nutrition Week is nutritious diets for everyone. And joining me in studio, as I mentioned, is a nutritionist. Her name is Martina Adegwa. Martina, welcome to Good Morning Kenya.
Thank you very much.
You're doing well this morning?
Yes, I am.
All right. So we get to commemorate National Nutrition Week this entire week up to the 7th of this month. Kindly, if you can just tell us the importance of having these celebrations or getting to commemorate that.
First and foremost, just like you had mentioned, the theme for this year is nutritious diets for everyone, and it's important to hold these conversations about nutrition because, one, during this particular week, we raise awareness on the importance of good nutrition in day-to-day life. So, secondly, it's also a time when we get to emphasize or highlight the link between nutrition and good health. And alongside that, we get to encourage individuals to learn and make informed decisions. What does this really mean? That before you decide on a particular meal or what will be prepared at the household level or at your home, you get to really think about, does this add value? How does this contribute to my daily health? What kind of lifestyle do I really want to live? And during this particular week, we also get to address issues that are related to undernutrition or overnutrition, and also promote strategies that really help us to combat malnutrition as a country.
Yeah, you've talked about overnutrition. I think we all know about undernutrition, you know. When you're talking about overnutrition, what does this mean?
This means that an individual gets to consume more than what they need, and as a result, they get to have, there's something called BMI in nutrition, body mass index. That is the relationship between the height and the weight of an individual. So anything above, there are particular ranges, but anything above 24.5 or 25 is actually considered excess. So an excess of nutrient intake is considered to be overnutrition. So a lot of times when this becomes a way of life, we see things such as obesity, overweight, and lifestyle diseases coming up, such as high blood pressure or hypertension, such as diabetes, as a result of overnutrition. Yes.
All right. So our focus today will be mainly on early childhood. So the importance of good nutrition on early childhood, specifically looking at young babies from the ages of 5, that's an infant, to around 5 years old. Maybe what does good nutrition mean for these young ones?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that if we change the beginning of a story, we change the whole story. So good nutrition does not just start at birth. It actually starts before conception. And therefore, when we talk about the first 1,000 days of life, that is the foundation of nutrition. Meaning that the first 270 days of pregnancy is very key, because good nutrition increases the chances of good outcomes. By outcome, I mean a healthy baby. Therefore, you find that as a country right now, there's a recommendation that at least a pregnant woman, one, should plan to get pregnant. Therefore, you get to eat the right kind of foods that actually promote a healthy body, so that you're able to carry the pregnancy to term. And during this 9-month period, antenatal visit and antenatal care is very key, because during this visit, a woman gets to receive advice on what to eat. They get to receive iron and folic acid supplement, which is very important to ensure that the baby is formed correctly and there are no deformities such as spina bifida or cleft palate. During this time, the mother is also prepared psychologically on the process of delivery and also how to do proper positioning and attachment when the child comes. So nutrition starts from that foundational moment of pregnancy. Then, of course, when the child is born, the first 6 months of life, 0 to 6 months, where we talk about exclusive breastfeeding. What does this really mean?
Yeah.
Exclusive breastfeeding is ensuring that the child, for the first 180 days, receives nothing but the mother's milk. This is important because it enhances the child's survival. One, because nutritious, when the mother breastfeeds the child exclusively, the child is able to get everything they need from that milk. So the mother does not need to complement the diet in any way, shape or form.
Yeah.
Then aside from that, you find that it's also affordable because it is readily available. So the baby will always be able to be fed on demand, which is what we encourage, breastfeeding on demand. And during this same period, the mother and the child get an opportunity to bond. And therefore, in the early childhood development, we talk about piles. These are physical development, intellectual development, emotional development. So because of the bonding, the child already starts developing in terms of psychologically. They develop reflexes such as sucking and swallowing. And also emotionally, they get to bond with the mother, which is also important. And physically, because they're getting nourished, they get to grow. And after the first 180 days, we move to 181 days.
Allow me to catch you before we get onto the next stage.
Yes.
For those who should exclusively breastfeed, you've said it's between 0 to 6 months.
Yes.
What of those mothers who are having challenges in breastfeeding, or for their children who probably get to be born and then they unfortunately lose their mothers? Then what happens between that period?
Very good
What
question.
should they be intaking?
So for mothers who have challenges, what happens is that when a mother attends this antenatal visit, those are some of the conversations that we get to have with the mothers about what should you expect, what are some of the challenges of breastfeeding. Because as I had mentioned, there's something called positioning and attachment. For a child to be able to be exclusively breastfed and the mother to be comfortable throughout the period, the positioning of the child needs to be correct, which is something we teach the mothers when they attend the antenatal care. And also the attachment. How does the baby attach to the breast? Is the mouth fully opened by the time the baby is being attached to the breast to breastfeed? Because if this is incorrect, then we have challenges such as cracked nipples, which really becomes a problem, because with cracked nipples, the mother cannot be able to breastfeed. They are extremely painful. And at times they even bleed. Sometimes the mother can have something called inverted nipples. Instead of the nipple being outside, it looks like a dent. It's inside the breast. So what we do is we correct it, not surgically, but we encourage certain practices such as massaging it outwards, such as using a syringe without the needle to pull it out, and eventually with the baby suckling, it also comes out. There are certain challenges that might be a barrier to breastfeeding, such as mastitis. When a mother does not breastfeed frequently or breastfeed on demand or leave the baby to sleep for too long, we encourage the mother to actually wake up the child to breastfeed, because if this is not done, then the child will end up the breast will end up accumulating so much milk and becoming hard, and it's extremely painful. And sometimes if this is not corrected, you might find that the milk might coagulate, and that becomes a surgical issue. So these are some of the conversations we have. But as you had mentioned, sometimes, unfortunately, we lose mothers in the process of childbirth.
Yeah, so what are the alternatives?
So there are alternatives such as breast milk substitutes that are available in the market, but as a country we also have an act that guides how and where this can be used. However, for the best outcomes for a child, we advocate for exclusive breastfeeding. And in cases where the mother might have passed on, then in those exceptional cases, we can actually provide these breast milk substitutes. Yes.
Which are just as nutritious.
Nothing can beat the nutrition outcomes of breastfeeding.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Moving on from 180 days onwards.
Yeah. So from 181 days, so the child is 7 months, completed 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding, and now we get to introduce complementary feeding. So this means that there is complementary feeding, meaning the child gets additional nutrients from other sources, but there's continued breastfeeding up till the age of 2 years and beyond. So in this particular time, it would be very important to think about nutrition in terms of the food groups. So currently, we talk about 10 food groups, which are: 1, there's eggs; 2, there's milk and dairy products. There's also beans and pulses. There's dark green vegetables. There's nuts and seeds. We also have other vegetables, which I'll give an example of just for purposes of understanding. Sure. Then we also have orange fruits and vegetables. And we also have meats, fish, and dairy products, and poultry. And finally, we have nuts and seeds. So these are the 10 food groups. When you talk about a healthy meal, a nutritious plate, a balanced diet, we're talking about consuming food from different food groups. For a child, it's important for them to consume from at least 4 food groups. So anytime you're thinking about introducing complementary feeding, remember, this child has exclusively been breastfeeding. Therefore, we're introducing something new. And it needs a lot of attention and patience, because we are teaching a child to consume something different. Therefore, it needs to also be gradual. And that is where we talk about responsive feeding. How do we understand, how do we check for signs or cues that a child is full, that a child is hungry, first of all, so that we promote, we talked about emotional development. We ensure that this child loves food. They don't just see a plate and start crying because they know, this is malenge, it is pumpkin, it is yellow, it is... So the first thing is, as we introduce complementary feeds, we need to ensure that we are introducing one at a time, so that we are also able to note whether a child is reacting or has got an allergy to a particular food. And therefore, as we continue breastfeeding, we're introducing from one food group at a time, and also observing, I had mentioned the cues that show, is a child hungry? What will tell us a child is hungry? Probably they are licking their lips, they're probably taking their hands to their mouth, they're probably yawning so much, or they're actually reaching out for something that you're having as a parent or you're eating. And how do we know that a child is actually full? They might turn away when you bring the food close to them. They might actually start sleeping, or they can also sleep because the food is boring. So it's important to mention that as we introduce complementary foods, we ensure it's actually something that we as parents can consume. It is not bland. We have actually fried the food. We've actually put a bit of salt in that food, so that it's something that even the child enjoys to eat. So, and that's pretty much a nutshell about complementary feeding.
So how do you avoid overfeeding?
Well, when a child, the first thing is there are quantities that are recommended. As we introduce complementary feeds at 181 days, the child might take between 2 to 3 spoonfuls. This is the spoon you use to eat. 2 to 3 is enough. But unless you see a child still opening the mouth as an indication of, I want more, that's when you can give more. That is from 7 to 8 months. But from 9 months, you'd notice that a child can consume up to half a cup of a food. And the cup we're referring to is a 250 ml cup. What locally in most communities is called probably a CK cup, a plastic cup written CK. So half of it is what a child can consume. And remember, that half is per meal with continued breastfeeding. And that half a cup is not just one food group. It is from at least 4 food groups. Then as the child advances, you get to move from half a cup to 1 cup. That is from 12 months. From 9 months and above, you can actually continue adjusting depending on the indications that a child is still wanting more or needs to consume more.
All right. Why is this good nutrition, crucial in that early life of a child?
Good nutrition is extremely important for various reasons. One, because the food we take is what helps us to build the immunity of the body. Remember, when a child is born, the foundations of life and healthy living for a child is that exclusive milk that they get from their mom.
Yeah.
In Swahili we say, hiyo ndio chanjo ya kwanza. So the first source of nutrition, source of health, source of life, to lay that foundation, to build that immunity so that this child is not susceptible to illnesses, is nutrition. And remember, as we talk about nutrition, it is also important to think about hygiene. How are we handling this food? Because a lot of times you'll realize when children are above 181 days and just getting complementary feeds, if good hygiene and sanitation is not observed, if you're not doing hand washing, if you're not cleaning the utensils of the baby, if the food, if you're probably mixing the raws and the raw food and the cooked food in terms of the utensils, you'd find that the real cases are high. So it is important to observe nutrition in these early years to ensure that, one, we are building that immunity and avoiding unnecessary illnesses, and also, two, growth and development. We talked about when a child is born, within the first hour of life, it's important to initiate breastfeeding so that this child can develop the sucking and swallowing reflex. That is also part of brain development. So it is through good nutrition that the brain also gets to be nourished enough to grow to its full potential. And therefore, you find that a child that has received good nutrition has got good academic performance as compared to a malnourished child. So aside from that, just the physical development, there's something called wasting and stunting. I talk about stunting, for example. And stunting is basically a child who appears to be shorter as compared to the average expectation. So the child is short for age, not because they come from a family of short people, but because they did not receive enough nutrition to grow to their full potential. So even physically, nutrition plays a key role in how a person might appear. And they talked about during pregnancy, the mother consuming things such as iron folic acid supplement, consuming food that is prepared with salt that has got iodine, which is also something that is worth talking about. How do we store salt in our houses? Do we just leave it open in tins? Do we buy salt from wholesales where it is just exposed to the air and therefore loses the iodine? So nutrition is really important because, again, in the physical development of a child, it also plays an important role.
I want to get back on the physical development of the child. You know, you've talked about stunted growth, you know, and you mentioned that one may be malnutritioned you can simply tell that a child is malnutritioned by probably how well they're growing in terms of their physical growth. That's their height and whatnot. Is there a way to tell other than just, you know, looking at them and you know, deciding, okay, we come from a family where people really grow tall, so this one might be having a problem? Or when should it be a concern for a parent that, okay, I think my child isn't really growing as they should be?
Yeah. So with regards to child growth, you realize that in Kenya we have a mother-child booklet. So once a woman is pregnant and attends antenatal visits, they're given a booklet, mother-child booklet that keeps a record of the mother's journey through pregnancy and also the journey of this child up till the age of 5 years, including immunizations that will be given along the way. And growth monitoring is one of the key things that is done in nutrition to be able to detect early and also intervene early in cases of malnutrition. Now, this means that from the time a child is born, the child's weight is taken, the length is taken, and also the head circumference is taken. And this is done every month, and that is why we encourage parents to ensure that they take the children for their clinics even beyond the 9 months mark. Every single month, because this is the critical time. The first 2 years is very critical because after those first 2 years, then it is impossible to reverse the effects of stunting. And stunting is not just physically. I know I've given an example of just the height for age, but it is also psychological, meaning that brain will never be fully developed or will never grow to its full potential. But if we are able to diagnose this in good time, meaning within the first 2 years of life, then we are actually able to intervene. And the intervention that we mean is through nutrition counseling for the mother, and we have very many other interventions. We have outpatient therapeutic feeds that are provided. We also have inpatient care that is given in various facilities we have across the country.
Yeah. Yeah, and this can only be diagnosed when you take the child to see a doctor, by a profession that is. So we advocate for mothers to be taking their children to these clinics.
Yes,
you know,
and what I would also emphasize is, you know, a lot of mothers are keen up till the 9-month mark, because that is when the child gets the measles vaccine. But growth monitoring should continue, because at 6 months this child is also getting vitamin A, which is very important again for eyesight, for brain development, for immunity, and for many other things. And this child also gets this vitamin A and deworming at 12 months and every 6 months after that, up till the 5-year mark. And during this particular period, we are also continuing to do the growth monitoring to just see, is this child's chart going up, or is there a place where it became plateau? That becomes a point of concern. Because again, when you notice that a child's growth curve is not going up, it means that probably either the child was sick, either the child is not consuming as much as they should. There is a reason for us to have a more detailed conversation with the mother and intervene in a timely manner.
Okay. What maybe are the long-term dangers for, you know, poor diet?
Wow, the long-term effects or results, one, of course, the immunity, poor immunity. So this child becomes sickly often, and even as an adult it can prolong. And aside from just recurrent illnesses, there's also upper respiratory illnesses that can also be very frequent. And if you think about income at the household level, a lot of money will be diverted to ensure that this child accesses medicine or health care, instead of it being redirected to providing good nutrition. So aside from that, there's also, I talked about the brain development of this child, the long term. If a child is stunted or does not get good nutrition within the foundational years, it means that this child's brain will not grow to its full potential. Therefore, even academically, their ability to understand the level of concentration will also not be at peak. Then in terms of growth and development, stunting, for example, this child being short for age, this means that when a person is stunted, every other person who comes after them, their next generation, will also be stunted. Because, I mean, even for a woman who is stunted, the uterus length is also shorter. Therefore, even if they are to carry a pregnancy, they would still give birth to a stunted child. So there are quite a lot of long-term effects that come as a result of stunting or as a result of poor nutrition. And looking at the ability to earn, we just talked about the IQ, for example. That means that for every malnutrition case, we also lose as a country in terms of GDP and our potential to earn in the future. All
right, there are children who are just picky eaters, or they just do not like to eat at all. So what's the best way to go about that? How should a parent or guardian who's looking after such a child go about that? How to deal with it?
So for picky eaters, and when does a child become picky? Because remember, children learn from behavior, children learn from observation, children learn from routine, and children learn from what they see and hear. So, and this is why going for those conversations in the morning in all government facilities, we have what we call health talks. And these are some of the conversations we have with mothers. Mothers ask that question: my child doesn't like food. What do I do? How do I feed my child who doesn't want to eat vegetables? So that is why responsive feeding becomes a key conversation for parents as they grow their kids, or as they take care of their children within the first 5 years. So, as I mentioned, it's important to introduce foods gradually, and to also make feeding time fun time. I remember growing up, my mother telling us, finish your food or I'll beat you or something, you know. That was not responsive care. But right now, there's a whole conversation on nurturing care. How do we feed a child? When it comes to providing food, is it that I will sing along with my child, or when my child eats, I will congratulate them and say, good girl, good boy. You know, when children are, anyone loves praise and everyone loves praise. Everyone wants to be acknowledged. So when this child is feeding, do you acknowledge and say, good job, well done? Do you clap your hands? So as a way of encouraging this child to continue feeding. And also, again, at what point does this child become picky? Is it that we are providing a monotonous diet? Is it one type of food every day? Remember, we've just learnt of the 10 food groups. So this means that we can actually play around with the food groups to ensure that the food is colorful. Remember, eating doesn't start from when food goes into your mouth. It starts from what you eat. When you perceive it and it looks good, it's colorful, you'll want to eat it. So the kind of food that we give our children also needs to be very colorful, meaning from different food groups. And also, as we provide this food, are we giving enough time for the child to eat and also play? Because, again, if we have competing activities as a parent, is it that we're hurrying the child to eat because we want to attend to something else? Or we're actually engaging the child as they eat? Are we all eating at the same time, which is another aspect of responsive care? Do we provide the different food to the child from what we are eating? Because, again, children in the early years will always look around the table and see, am I eating the same meal or are they eating something different?
All right, and on that note, we'll take a short break. Don't you go too far. We'll be back to continue with this conversation. Welcome back. This is Good Morning Kenya, the health segment, and we are looking at the importance of good nutrition in early childhood. And right now, I want us to get into snacking, because I feel like during this time is when we start introducing some unhealthy things to the little ones. So how to go about snacking, and maybe what are some healthy alternatives to snacks?
So as a child continues to grow, and their dietary needs also increase, and therefore, apart from the main meals, they also need snacks or in-between meals, as we refer to them. Now, a lot of parents sometimes provide sweets or yummy things that children want, but there are healthy options, such as providing things like fruits as a snack. There's also something like yogurt, which is very whole and nutritious for children who can actually stomach milk or milk products. There's also a glass of warm milk. There's also porridge as a snack. And you know, porridge can be interesting, can be made fun. By this I mean not providing just one type of porridge for a very long time. We can try something like wimbi, for example, and once that is done, we can try something fermented, but not fermented in terms of adding lemon to it, but naturally fermented at home, you know. So we can also try to cut. Something else is, as we provide these fruits, make it fun, as I mentioned, or interesting. If it's an apple, cut it into small cubes so that the child, and it is given to a child in a plate. And what this does is the child is able to identify that this is for me. I'm now a grown-up. I can actually pick and put in my mouth by myself. That is also part of brain development, because they're learning hand-eye coordination, how to pick and how to place in their mouth. And also, something else is that it is important to avoid giving too much in terms of portions. It's probably ideal to give one fruit, or to provide something like nuts. A handful of ground nuts is good enough as a snack, because you also want this child to be ready and hungry for the next meal.
So for the beverages, the beverage side, we stick to porridge and yogurt. No
porridge,
sodas.
Yogurt, milk. Please avoid sugary, processed, carbonated drinks such as sodas or quenchers or any processed food. It is best to try and remain natural as possible, because again, this child depends on that food that you're giving. That meal should be quality in terms of accessibility of those nutrients, as opposed to having so many processed things that introduce chemicals into the body of the child.
All right. As a nutritionist who has been in this sector for a while now, maybe what are some of the most common maybe issues that you realize that parents are facing in trying to have a healthy child, mainly nutrition-wise?
Yeah, the ideology that the child does not like food, but you find that a lot of times it's as a result of force feeding, and that's why we have these conversations about responsive feeding. Another challenge might actually be with parents with special needs children. Feeding for special needs children is different in terms of one might probably have to mash the food, one probably has to feed for longer, you know. So that can be a challenge when we talk about ensuring that we provide certain quantities. So we talk about providing small, frequent meals for these particular children. And then, of course, another challenge might actually be job insecurity at the household level. Remember that for you to be able to actually afford or provide an adequate, nutritious or balanced meal for the household, one needs to have a source of income. And looking at life at the moment, the cost of living has skyrocketed. And therefore, food security in terms of affordability and access is a challenge for most of the parents at the moment. And then, of course, looking at the market, the junk foods, the snacks, the sweets, the processed foods happen to be readily available and more affordable. So parents tend to reach out because a lot of times, as I said, most parents are probably working long hours and therefore want a quick fix or a quick meal or something that is just readily available for their children. So they might actually turn to these options. And finally, I talk about infection prevention for school-going children or the early year child. Assuming that they go to probably daycare, playgroup, or an ECD, you find that in some areas infection prevention is not at the best, and therefore children keep on picking infections, and parents, instead of looking for ways in which they can provide, for example, citrus fruits such as oranges, or use nutrition as a way to ensure that the child builds immunity, they keep on buying over-the-counter medicine. So that can also be a challenge that parents face.
All right. Now, when it comes to the cost of food or nutritious food, as you've mentioned, you know, sometimes people may look at it like having a nutritious diet means, you know, you need to be having money in your pocket, like it's expensive food. Maybe, you know, and also while you were speaking to us, you gave us 10 groups of foods that babies should intake, you know, and they should at least have, you mentioned at least four.
At least four from the 10.
From the 10 in the group. So maybe what are the alternatives for those families that are on a budget, you know, those low income earning families that maybe someone may be watching right now and wondering 4 different groups of foods. I mean, we can barely afford a meal. So maybe how to go about that?
Maybe I'd like to give an example of a meal that an ordinary household would be preparing. Githeri, for example.
Yeah.
Githeri has got beans, which is from the pulses family or group. It has got probably maize, which is from the cereals and tubers group. It has got an onion, which comes from the other vegetables, probably a carrot, if you may, which comes from the orange fruits and vegetables. And nothing stops us from throwing in a potato or 2 for the child. Those are already 5 food groups. So from that same pot, we can pick 2 potatoes, pick beans, because it was fried with onion and carrots, and mash it for the baby. And remember, by mashing, I'm not talking about a blender, I'm talking about using a fork, because this baby is supposed to learn how to chew food of different texture. So that is how simple nutrition can be. If we talk about a household that probably is preparing something like ugali and a traditional vegetable like maybe pumpkin leaves or probably mrenda, and if possible, they get an egg. Remember, there's ugali, which is from the cereals and tubers. There's dark green vegetable. We have the mrenda or the pumpkin leaves, which have been fried using an onion and a tomato, which is other vegetables. And if we throw in 1 egg for the child, that's already 4. Or even if it's mrenda and ugali or mrenda and omena, which has been fried using an onion or a tomato, that's already 3 food groups. And we provide a slice of orange, for example. For a household that has got 4 children, 1 orange sliced into 4, and 1 child takes a quarter. That's already 4 food groups. So the notion that nutrition is expensive, right now we've simplified it when we talk about the food groups, so that even as a mother makes a choice on what to prepare, they are able to see that everyone eats from the same pot, which is what we're encouraging.
All right, I love that. What are the misconceptions, maybe matters, nutrition that you would love to demystify? I guess the expensive one is one of them. Yeah.
And there's also, wow, I've come across quite a bit of them, such as women who are pregnant should not take eggs because either they will have big babies, or they will have babies who don't grow hair, or they will have babies who who really like salivate a lot. Those are misconceptions. As we have learned today, we have 10 food groups, and therefore a mother needs to also consume from the different food groups. Something else is that children should not take bananas. Bananas are good. Bananas have magnesium, and bananas don't mean that babies will be too big. We've learned about different food groups. So nutrition is all about playing around with the food groups and ensuring that this child eats from various groups. Another misconception would probably be that that children should not be breastfed in public, because there are certain communities that believe someone can throw something using their eyes. And here we are, nutritionists, saying a baby should be breastfed on demand. So, I mean, there's a lot of advocacy within the ECD network and also other players in nutrition, both those who are implementing nutrition-specific and nutrition-sensitive programs, to ensure that we have lactation spaces or nutrition spaces or safe spaces for mothers to breastfeed or even express milk in their offices or even in markets. And you can see a county like Kisumu, where Kibuye Market has got breastfeeding space. So such things are misconceptions that exist. But like I said, nutrition is important. Nutrition is readily available to us as long as we understand the foundation, which is the 10 food groups.
All right. Okay, now as we almost come to a close of this very beautiful conversation, maybe how best can we educate ourselves on proper nutrition? Maybe what are the resources that are readily available for each one of us?
So I'm here today because I am a member of the ECD network. So being in networks or technical working groups for us who are within the professional space is an opportunity for us to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn new things about nutrition. Then at grassroots level, for community members, we also do a lot of awareness creation through radio stations and TV stations like what you're doing, and I commend you for the good job, because a lot of people get to hear, to learn, and also to ask questions through these platforms, through community radios and all that as well. And also at facility levels, the health-seeking behaviors nowadays have improved for a lot of parents of young people, because again, now we've moved from an age where moms stay at home to take care of their parents. Everyone has to go out and work, and therefore daycares and playgroup spaces have become a place where we can actually leave our children. Therefore, there's an opportunity, and this is what we're doing, educating the daycare owners and daycare managers about good nutrition, so that even as a parent goes to hustle or earn a living, then the children still are able to access healthy meals from the childcare center. And what we've also done as a network and in partnership with the government is we've also ensured that there's a lot of linkage. A lot of stakeholders working within the ECD space are providing knowledge and linkages to health facilities, so that these mothers, these parents, these fathers can actually get referred to health facilities in case the daycare owners notice issues. And as I had mentioned, that's a great resource, because there you will find a nurse, a nutritionist, a doctor, a community health promoter who will talk to you about nutrition, and also a nutritionist who will take a deep dive into that conversation, so that you're able to understand how best to take care of your child.
All right, thank you so much, and I'll now allow you to give us maybe your last remarks on this topic.
So probably as a close, thank you very much for having me here, and also ensuring that nutrition is prioritized as a conversation, because again, nutrition, I like to say, is a marker and maker of development. So when we start right, things don't end up wrong, things start wrong. When we start right with nutrition, as I had mentioned, we change the whole story. And therefore, the foundation of good health and good life for us as a nation is ensuring that we are able to provide a good foundation for our children by providing good nutrition.
Thank you so much for gracing our show today.
Thank you very much.
This is where we wrap up this conversation and put a cap to today's Good Morning Kenya. Very many thanks to each and every one of you who has been tuned in. Until tomorrow, God willing, my name is Vivian Degwa. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing. Goodbye.